Hi everybody, it's Dave and Olive. Thanks for joining us here at Book Blather. We try to have a little fun while we talk about the books we've read recently to help spread the joy of reading. We do some sci-fi, horror, fantasy, but we read all other kinds of fiction and nonfiction as well. Today, we're doing another tag. Okay everybody, thanks for stopping by. Today we are doing the Deja Vu tag. And we're doing this tag because we were tagged by Criminolly. Now if you don't know Criminolly, we'll link his channel below. You should check it out. Even if you don't know Criminolly, you probably know of him. That's because you probably heard his name in whispers or rumors of people telling of his allegedly nefarious exploits. This all started some time ago when Criminolly created the 100 book challenge that gripped the BookTube community like a vice and just began wreaking absolute terror throughout the community. And since then there have been many attempts to there have been attacks and attempts to vilify and demonize this individual, and for what according to some people continues to be a reign of terror that continues to wreak absolute havoc on the community. Olive and I, on the other hand, think he's a really nice guy, and he's a pretty upstanding, nice English gentleman. But I will say that his mystical influence on the BookTube community continues even now, because we're doing this tag. And as you know, we historically didn't do tags, and only recently we did a couple, just because they were special ones. But now, today we're doing this one because Criminolly has, with his near magical persuasive powers over the BookTube community, once again persuaded us to fully embrace doing tags. So, Criminolly's great. Everybody loves him. You should check out his channel. So, on to the tag. So there's the Deja Vu tag. The first question is, do you reread, and how often? We basically do not reread. But part of that is, the next question is, why do you or don't you reread? And we don't because we are incredibly slow readers. We love reading, but we're really, really slow. Olive's a little quicker than me, but we're both pretty slow at it, and we have to share all the books. So there are so many books out there to be read that we'll never get to that we don't want to spend time rereading. So we have done it, but it's been rare. What have been your favorite books to reread? Okay, so for this, I would have to say the only book that we've read multiple times, more than twice, at many different times throughout the course of our life. And this is a book that I mentioned before in one of the other tags that we did. And this is the original Dragonlance book, Dragons of Autumn Twilight. Now, as you can see from how this copy looks, that it's been through the ringer. That's because we've read this a bunch of times. This is the first book that I read when I was younger, I think about 13, that really made me start to love reading. And even though I didn't read a lot until later in life, I used to hate reading until I read this book. This is, as you know, a big, sprawling universe now, Dragonlance books by many different authors. But this one, the original Dragonlance Chronicles trilogy by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, this is the one that started all off. And, it's one of the old classic fantasies about a group of misfit characters that are, get together and go on this very long quest to save the world of Kryn. Okay, so we've read that book many times throughout, a number of different times throughout our life. The other ones in the series too, but that first one we've read repeatedly. Even read it, like half of it, about maybe a year or two ago. Doesn't hold up as well anymore as when I was 13, but it's still that I would have to say that's our favorite one to reread, and it's probably partially because of the nostalgia. Okay, next question, what would you like to reread? And for this one, I think we'd say, this is one that I mentioned when we reviewed a little while back, Paradise Block by Alice Ash. So this is actually a UK book. This was her debut novel. And when we reviewed this sometime a year and a half ago or so, we had mentioned at the time we wanted to reread this one. What this was about is it's about a bunch of individuals that live in a rundown apartment complex, or people that are connected with those that live in that complex. And it's basically almost like a bunch of short stories. There's a bunch of individual tales about these individuals, but sort of the backdrop of the story is sort of, I think, this like urban sprawl, and so all of the characters end up being connected to somebody else or something else in some way, and so there's a lot of connections and a lot of symbolism, and it's one of those ones that you're done with it, and you realize how much there was, and you kind of want to go back and reread it to try to glean a little more value out of it. So I'm sure I'll get more out of it the second time around. So I even though we don't reread much, I actually am planning to reread this one eventually. Okay, and the next one is, what book do you predict will be so good that you will want to reread it? So this one is, since we haven't read it yet, we don't have it, but this is the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. Which, we've heard a number of people talk about, much beloved series, and so we plan to try it, and we imagine it just looks like it's really good fun, this series. So I have seen a number of different people on YouTube talking about it when they are rereading it. So it looks like it's a series that people often reread because they enjoy it so much. So we're excited to try that. I'm hoping to try that actually later this year. And because a couple of the booktubers that we watch are really into it, and so I'm predicting it'll be good. That we'll probably want to reread it like everybody else. All right, so the next one is, pick a book from your younger years that you think would be interesting to reread. Okay, so for this, I wanted to mention two. The first one was one that I read when I was in high school, and this is The Crystal Shard by R.A. Salvatore. And I remember really loving this at the time. This book was published in, so long ago, 1988. And so the reason I want to reread this is, today there is this whole, I don't even know how many books about this character right here, Drizzt, the Dark Elf. This character has spawned a whole bunch of different series of books, obviously incredibly popular. But his start was in this book, The Crystal Shard, where Drizzt actually wasn't even the main character. The main character was this guy, this young barbarian. His name was Wolfgar, I won't look for it now, but I think it was Wolfgar or something like that, Wolf something. And he was actually the main character, and Drizzt and this dwarf were they were main characters, but not the main character, and they were just helping him. But Drizzt obviously came into his own, and he's like this major character now. So I would kind of like to go back. It's been 30 years since I read this, and I remember enjoying it at the time. And so I'd kind of like to go back and reread it, and just kind of reread where Drizzt got this start before there was all this fanfare about him. So that's what I want to read that one. Another one is probably the first, quote-unquote fantasy book that I ever read. And this was, I don't have this anymore, but as I read as a little kid. It was one of the first books that I read, I think. And this was the Tales of the Crystal Shard, or The Tale of the Crystal Shard. And so I actually found a couple pictures of this really really old version, and this was obviously geared for a younger audience. As you can see here, there's pictures. Every page has pictures interwoven with the text. And I read this in I think it was third grade. And it's one of those experiences I still remember. It was my first introduction into fantasy quote unquote literature, and I still remember it today as a great experience. So it would be neat, especially now that Crystal Shard is getting all this attention. It would be neat to go back and reread that original younger person's book. Okay, so the next one. Tell us a series or book that's so big or complex you need to reread to better understand. And this is a book we reviewed just recently. And this is You've Lost a Lot of Blood by Eric LaRocca. And this, obviously, the problem is not that it was too big. The problem was that, not problem, but the issue is that it's complex. And again, I same thing. I said when I finished this one that we were going to reread this one, because this one, I won't redo that review because we just did it. But what I will say, when I characterize this book, I characterize it as an Escher painting in book form, because there were so many layers within layers and layers of all different types, and it was really complex. There was a lot of nesting, and it's one of those ones. I finished it and immediately I'm flipping back, and I'm like, I think I got a lot of it, but I know I didn't get all of it. And so this is one that there was just so much happened, so much packed in so quickly, that definitely worth rereading it. Okay. Is there a specific type of genre you think is best, worst for reread potential? I'm not really sure what the answer for this is. I guess I guess probably best is fantasy, because that's the one that I've read over and over again without any problem. It was still enjoyable to read that Dragonlance book repeatedly, and some other ones, in that series. So for that reason, I'd say that. The worst, I would guess, is just a mystery or a thriller, because you already know what's going to happen by the time it's over. Once you've already read it once. So that's what I would say for that. Okay, the next one is there a book you've liked more upon reread? And again, we don't have too many of these, but I guess I would say, and this was recent, Tolkien's The Hobbit, which, as I'm sure everybody knows, is a precursor to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And this is geared for a younger audience, so I read this when I was very young. I don't remember how old, but I was fairly young, probably just like a preteen, or this was fun to go through again, because I think because of the nostalgia, it's a nice, cute little fantasy story, and it has such a big place in fantasy culture today, and it was nice to revisit it after all these years. Okay, is there a book you liked less upon reread? Yes. That is The Body Artist by Don DeLillo. The reason I say that is because I read this book probably a little over a decade ago. I don't know, maybe 10, 15. When did this come out? This was published in 2001. So I probably read it shortly after it came out, maybe 15 years ago, something like that. And I just totally didn't like it and totally didn't get it. And so, in a couple years ago, once I started reading a lot more again, and because it was short, I said, you know what, there was that book, Don DeLillo, and I'm like, it's Don DeLillo. So I thought that book has to be good, and I think I probably just wasn't as sophisticated. I probably just wasn't, a much more sophisticated reader now than I was then. So I'm like, I probably just wasn't a very sophisticated reader at the time, and I probably just missed it. I probably didn't get it. So let me give it another try. It's short, even though we don't usually do that. And so I read it again, and I still hated it. I don't get it. So what this story is about, it's about a woman that's like an artist who's living by herself in a rented house on the coast, and then like some mysterious man shows up in her, I think like naked in her bedroom, that and like he's hard to talk to, but he seems to know things about her life, and so you're like, it just sounds like a pretty like symbolic like story, right? Like this is some manifestation of her own mind, and it's, you know, she's revisiting things in her life, and this. I didn't get this. I really did not get this book. I didn't understand it, and I was reading it twice. So I still got to believe there's something to this because it's Don DeLillo. So if anybody's out there has read this and you got this book, explain it to me, please. Please leave me a comment and explain to me what I am missing at this book with this book. But so when I say I enjoy it less on the reread, that is because I didn't like it the first time and I didn't like it the second time. But the second time I was angry because I went through the trouble of rereading it so that I could understand it and still didn't. So it just I was really displeased after I read it the second time. So okay, if you reread, let us know a book you'd like to reread before the end of this year. So yeah, we don't normally reread, like I said, but if we did do one before the end of this year, which I doubt, but if we did reread one before the end of this year, it would probably be Eric LaRocca's You've Lost a Lot of Blood, because we probably are going to reread that before too long. So okay, so the last prompt is to tag some friends. So the first one I'm going to tag is Juan over Plagued by Visions, because I know he definitely does a fair bit of rereading, so I'd be curious to see some of his answers to this. Want to tag Nemiria, who's got a great channel. You should go check her out. Pax over Pax Panic, another great channel. Obviously, these are all great channels. That goes without saying. These will all be linked below. You should go check them out. Next, I want to tag Jillian over at Novel Opinions. I'd be curious to see her answers. And finally, I wanted to tag, we wanted to tag Talia over at Bandana Bookmom. So, no pressure. Anybody that doesn't want to do it, but I was trying to do people that I think have not done this before, and I don't think any of those people have done this. So, if you haven't done it and you want to, please do. Be curious to see what your answers are. So, once again, thanks to Criminolly for tagging us in this. We were just having some fun. Of course, Criminolly is well loved. Everybody loves Criminolly. Definitely go check out his channel if you haven't already. And so thanks, and also thanks Ollie for persuading us to getting us over the hump and persuading us to finally just stop with this resistance to tag nonsense. So appreciate your kind words. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell so that you get notified the next time Olive says it's okay to upload another video. Thanks so much for watching. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.